Good evening, Wakefield. Today's Town Council meeting is June 25th, 2018, 6:30 p.m. Call to order. Do we have any public participation, Steve?
I don't believe so. Sherry? No.
None. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have approval for the minutes from the regular board minutes from May 31st, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And for the regular board minutes from June 11th, 2018?
I have a edit that needs to be made.
Okay, so we'll table that. I need a second on that.
Second.
All in favor to table the regular board minutes from June 11th, 2018?
What is the edit?
Mine is that a vote was off, that I didn't vote. Names were messed up on a vote. And I think there might be some other edits that people have as well.
Okay. Ed, you okay with that? Is that- Okay. Okay, all in favor for tabling the regular board minutes for June 11th, 2018? Hang on.
I can ask the discussion as it was my request.
Okay, well,
If anyone
we had an edit, so I don't know.
debated it.
It's up to you if you want to add to it.
No, I just.
Maybe edit that.
Okay,
All right.
that's good.
Okay, so all in favor to table the regular board minutes from June 11th, 2018? All in favor? Aye. All
So we're
opposed?
fixing it. Yeah, we're fixing it.
None opposed? Okay. And the executive board minutes, I need approval from June 11th, 2018 also.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Just a reference for the town council. We have a new GoPro, so anytime we have a vote directly in front of me, there won't be a red light on, but everyone's vote will be identified so that there's no miscommunication, misunderstanding who voted for what. So right in front of me, but no red light. So any votes at all will be declared and noted. Okay, first we have presentation action item, National Grid grant of location easement. First is grant of location easement, and we have Rick Stinson from DPW and also Joe Conley. Welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm not sure you had a choice, but thanks for coming.
Thank you. You have before you tonight the two items. One is the grant of location, and the other is the requirement letter. That is part of the project process. Over the past 3.5 years, the town has been discussing the proposed 345 kV project with National Grid and Eversource. Numerous town departments and boards have participated in the discussions to ensure that all areas were considered and reviewed and in detail. Also, over that 3.5 year period, there's probably been at least 35 meetings, if not more, that have been held. These meetings included official public meetings, public informational meetings, departmental meetings, all related to the Wakefield portion of the project. The EFSB has issued its final decision on the project. Also, this board, back in, I believe it was February, and I can't remember the date, closed the public hearing on the project. DPW has been preparing the requirements for the project. This is similar to the MWRA project and some other projects we have done. We prepare that are extensive. We prepare this document. The letter outlines expectations for the utilization of the public right-of-way. There are additional permits that National Grid or their contractor will have to get and obtain during the process. It's a street opening permit, which may have some additional requirements. There will be a trench permit. There will be traffic permits and a bunch of other items. Some of the major items, and I'll go through them on the letter that you have before you. If you look at item 2, it talks about, it's pretty extensive, the MBTA right-of-way, which provides that a paving of the access road, which will become the rail trail, will take place. Item 8 talks about the utilities requiring relocation, so that we don't have any conflicts with that. We want to make sure that we have, at the end of this project, more information than we actually have now, which will be a very positive opportunity. Item 10 talks about final roadway paving. So we will be getting milling and curb-to-curb paving on those sections. The areas, there are some street crossings that are not listed here. You'll see like Main Street, Bennett, Richardson. That's because those will be permanent patches. Those won't be paving in those areas. 13 talks about traffic management, and that's been ongoing. We've had a number of meetings with the police department, fire department, National Grid, talking about traffic. That will continue until in working out different details to ensure we don't have as minimal of impact as possible when the project's ongoing, and also to make sure the areas are safe. Item 15 talks about the days that work is not allowed in the public right-of-way. This does not mean that in the MBTA right-of-way there could be work going on, or at the substation, because those aren't under our control. Also talks about the process for extended hours if it's needed, and there are a couple locations that it will be, and that requires a permit from me during the process. So there'll be a lot of detailed information on that. There'll be pre and post leak detection on the sewer and the drain as part of the process. That's item number 31, but that's also in the EFSB's decision that they finalized. Item 37 talks about funding for town construction inspector. And that'll be up to $75,000. The number we've come up with so far is around $56,000, but we have a cushion in there in case there is some additional things that need to be done. Item 40 talks about the loop detectors at Broadway and Albion. Currently, there are loop detectors in the ground. We've asked National Grid to put in a camera system there similar to the Salem Street area, the Water Street area. And we did that because when they go through and dig the road up to put the line in, they'll tear out the loop detectors, and they'd have to put them back. Then they'll come back and mill and pave, and they'd have to dig out the loop detectors and then put them back. This is much better for us in terms of, and for them, it's cost effective. They don't have to go back and do it a number of times, because it never seems to get done when you need it. And with the school there, we want to have it, we'll make the change now, and it'll be completed before the project even starts. Number 42 talks about noise mitigation. That's also discussed in the EFSB decision regarding noise. And temporary patching is also addressed, along with a number of requirements in the whole document. There are 43 items in here. A couple things with the document you may have before you, and they've been corrected in the final one. There are a couple places that we had Board of Selectmen and not Town Council. That's been changed. And I also, before, if you approve this, before I sign it, I have to replace the town engineer, as there will be a new town engineer at that time. So with that, be glad to answer any questions, or if...
Thank you, Rick. Julie?
Thank you, Rick, and for the benefit of the town councilors, so as a liaison to the light and gas department, I sat in on meetings on Friday with Mr. Stinson and Mr. Mayo and representatives from National Grid, walked through this, have a deeper understanding. I don't think that there's really anything different than what Mr. Stinson went through, other than I'd just like to highlight that by approving this, it's really no different than what the then Board of Selectmen approved back at their February 16th. At that point, the route was what was accepted by the EFSB, which stands for the Energy Facility Siting Board. And essentially now this grant of location is just defining that in a document really for the town, as well as compliance with our construction and permitting process. So that's essentially what this is. I did just want to say too, I know different towns have had different approaches to this, and I wasn't on the board when a lot of this was debated, but I watched all of the hearings and whatnot, and I work in electricity as well. And I just want to say that I think by working closely with National Grid, the town is getting benefits that are important to our town. We voted in a unanimous vote at the last town meeting for rail to trail, and this will really reduce the cost of that by having the paving on there and many other kind of benefits as well. I did spend a lot of time talking. You all know that my high horse tends to be communications, and I spent some time kind of understanding how the communications would work, because there will be some disruption for sure, particularly when public roads are worked on. And so there will be meetings before any public roads are worked on. And Mr. Mayo and I have spoken about not only relying on National Grid and the website, which is actually a shared National Grid Eversource, because it's a joint project of the two investor-owned utilities, not only relying on that website, but making sure that we're using our own communications tools, much like you see the road work that's being done now. There are emails coming out for people who are signed up, and I encourage people who aren't signed up to get on the email list, as well as some social media pushes. So I think because of the cooperation and the openness we've had with National Grid, we're going to have some benefits for the community. And I have a motion here, but we can open it up for discussion or further comments from the public as well.
Let's open it up for discussion first, just to see if there's anything someone has in mind that Julie didn't cover. Thank you for going there and spending the time.
Sure.
It's easy having two different liaison appointments, isn't it? Any discussion from Town Council? Ed?
So, Rick, I had a few questions actually relative to a few different provisions here. The first being provision number 2 in MBTA right-of-way. What is the general width of the rail trail?
It'll be 12 feet.
So the entirety of the rail trail is 12 feet wide?
Right.
I'm a little concerned this right-of-way to allow its vehicles and equipment to access the cable for future maintenance. I'm a little bit concerned that this will be an access road as compared with a portion of the rail trail. I know it's obviously connected to and feeling like that, but what sort of restrictions or limitations are we going to have on this spans from Main Street to Salem Street so that it doesn't feel like an access road as compared with the more serene rail trail that would be in other portions of town?
First, and National Grid may want to add more to this, but from discussions, I don't believe there'll be really any maintenance unless absolutely needed. There would be inspections occasionally, but I don't think there's a lot of, it's not like you're out there every month or 6 months, or, am I correct?
Correct. It's a maintenance access road for vehicles, but unless you have a damage or a problem with the cable, typically you won't have vehicles on it.
There's just no indication in terms of, what a maintenance access road normally equates to in terms of usage. Is there some sort of, over a 6-month or 1-year span, some sort of, generally accepted or anticipated rate of usage?
Let me just interrupt for a second. What we might want to do is have the people that need to be heard come on up to the front table, just so the folks at home, we all can hear you great, but folks at home may not be able to hear
Peter,
you.
maybe you have Councilor Tombrowski ask all his questions.
I'm sorry?
Why don't we have him ask all his questions and then have the other folks come up,
Well,
so there's not a back and forth, maybe?
Well, it depends if he has 2 questions or 20, I guess, because they may not remember all the questions that he's going to put forward. Right. So let me do this before we go on. let's see. Actually, who are you? I'm sorry. What's your
I'm
name?
David Campilli. I'm
Okay.
underground transmission engineer for National
Sure.
Grid.
Is there anyone else you think that you need, like Rich or Bess or Benoit, any of the folks? We have extra chairs if you want to come up, and maybe just so it's, and then we'll have Ed ask us questions. I just didn't want to have it
Yeah, we can
confusing.
assemble a panel if you'd like.
Right, cast of thousands. Going to get a larger WCAT next year. Okay, just a quick introduction with names, and then we'll go back to Ed's questions. So, all you folks are from National Grid. It's Bess Gorman, right? Bess Gorman.
Correct, Bess Gorman, Counsel for
And
National
Is it
Grid.
Rich Jones? Okay,
Richard Jones, PM, project manager.
okay, thank you. Okay, sorry to interrupt, Ed, but I just want to make sure.
No, so I'm just trying to understand, because there's an access road and there's a rail trail, and I'm curious to know what sort of usage is anticipated, and also, you know, what sort of signage there's going to be and the like. So will it feel like you're walking on an access road, or will it feel like you're walking on a rail trail, and you know, what sort of safety concerns are there?
Well, let me go first. The access road is similar to the rail trail. They're both paved.
Right.
Okay. The usage are related to other areas that, and what my anticipation is, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have MWRA lines that run through different parts of town that no one even knows about. We have other utilities that run through different parts of town. You never see anyone on those unless there's a problem. My interpretation is that would be the same for this here. Okay, so you may have nothing in the course of 5 years, and then you may have something. You may have nothing in the course of 10 years, and you may.
Well, I
have
guess that's what I'm asking. I mean, are we talking about, in fact, only like some sort of like catastrophic event that would require vehicles to be, you know, driving on a rail trail, or are we talking about, you know, over the course of maintenance, then quarterly there's vehicle traffic, and you know, what does that look like? Because I've been on plenty of rail trails, and I've not seen, you know, say signage, for example. You know, it's always no motorized vehicles and the like, and it feels like very much like a pedestrian or a bicyclist path, not a, you know, not an access road.
Yeah. What I would say is that we will have to visit our manholes occasionally, and those are pretty widely spaced along the rail trail. Those might get an annual inspection, and that would be about the extent of it. It would be getting to the manholes, opening the cover, and probably spending a couple hours just making sure everything is looking okay. And that might be typically done once a year. There are some state requirements for inspecting electric facilities, and that's typically on a 5-year basis, so we might do it a little more frequently than that. And then if we did have an actual failure of the cable system, which we expect to be very infrequent, that would be a more substantial effort where we'd be working between two manholes, and there would be some pretty extensive equipment in the event of a failure. But again, we expect that to be a pretty infrequent activity. So you might see once a year inspections, and then the very infrequent larger problem.
Total of 3 manholes on the MBTA.
That's how many would be on this, between Main Street and Salem? 3?
That's all that's on the regular.
And another question, I think this is probably better directed toward you, Rick. Paragraph 5 talks about sidewalk repair and any damage that's done, cracks, et cetera, done by equipment. Who makes that determination?
We do.
Is that spelled out sufficiently in this agreement? Because it says.
That'll
comply
end
with-
up in our street opening.
I'm sorry?
That ends up in our street opening permit. So we do a street opening permit after this
Right.
with the contractor, that will be in that permit.
So it'll specifically say that it's in DPW's discretion whether there was damage done by the construction as compared with something that could be argued pre-existing?
Correct. And one of the things that will be done before this project starts is they're gonna do a TV inspection of the entire route, my understanding is, that will videotape roadways, sidewalks, all of that stuff. So we'll have all that data to look at.
And then finally, I know you had mentioned item 37 was the town construction inspection. I think you had mentioned 56,000 has been expended thus far.
No,
Is
no,
that-
56,000 is anticipated to be expended.
How much has been expended to date? Any-
Zero.
$0. And so the 56,000 is anticipated, the 75,000 was the buffer, then
Correct.
the additional 19 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the town council?
I do, and this is just for clarification. So working is also Saturday at 7 a.m.?
Yeah, the hours in the town bylaw are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
Saturday? Is there any way to consider that that's early for a Saturday? Is there any way this contract could do Monday to Friday? I know it's our bylaws, but just putting it out there that.
In all of our public projects, we do allow Saturday.
We do.
Because it just would take 2 weeks to get things done. So,
Yeah, that doesn't mean they're gonna work Saturday.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
that,
We
just follow
can.
the bylaw.
It's available.
Yeah.
And there's nothing on Sunday? Pardon me jumping
Not
in.
unless I give a permit,
That's okay.
and nothing on holidays.
So
Julie, do you want to make a motion?
I'm going to make a motion then.
Sure.
I move that the town council approve the, quote, grant of location transmission line franchise presented by the Director of Public Works in response to the petition dated November 3rd, 2017, and filed by New England Power Company, doing business as National Grid, the company, on the terms and subjects to the conditions set forth in the said director's letter of today's date to the company entitled Town of Wakefield National Grid Underground 345 Cable KV Project Requirements. Which letter the town council hereby approves and authorizes the said director to sign and deliver on behalf of the town. Without limiting the generality of the foregoing, the said project shall be located in the following streets. Albion Street, from the Stoneham line to Broadway. Broadway, from Albion Street to North Avenue. North Avenue, from Broadway to approximately the railroad tracks in the vicinity of Jiffy Lube. Across Main Street, from the west side of Main Street at the railroad right-of-way at Bennett Street. Across Bennett Street, from the south side of the railroad right-of-way to the north side of the railroad right-of-way. Across Richardson Street, from the railroad right-of-way to the railroad right-of-way across Water Street. From the south side of the railroad right-of-way to the north side of the railroad right-of-way. Across New Salem Street, from the south side of the railroad right-of-way to the north side of the railroad right-of-way. Across Fitch Court, from the south side of the railroad right-of-way to the north side of the railroad right-of-way. Salem Street, from the railroad right-of-way at Nablus Road to Montrose Avenue, and finally Montrose Avenue from Salem Street to the entrance of the National Grid substation located off of Montrose Avenue.
So moved. Second, I mean, sorry.
Thanks. All in favor?
Wait, discussion
want-
first.
Okay.
In thinking about this and looking further at the hours, I think the Saturday at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is really problematic, given how deeply entrenched this is in neighborhoods. And while we may have, as a body, done or allowed that sort of work in the past, I don't know that that's a reason to do it going forward, at least, with a project that is so entrenched in neighborhoods. So I would seek to amend the motion to have it the requisite hours from Monday through Friday and excluding Saturday.
Okay. Yeah.
I would disagree with excluding Saturday at this point, especially when, Rick, you said it's not gonna be Saturdays. If there is a problem, I think it's something that we can come back to the board. If there seems to be a ton of Saturday 7 to 7s, and we could make an adjustment at that point, but I am not comfortable right now eliminating Saturdays.
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I don't know if there'll be, I'm sure there'll be some Saturdays, but do you plan how many Saturdays from our discussions? I did not think so.
We will be working on Saturdays, but then it won't be every Saturday.
Right.
depends on where the job is, what the weather conditions were, how the project schedule.
The other thing too is that taking out Saturdays altogether obviously will increase the length of the project. And you want it as tight as possible to get it in and out of the way. So just kind of two different approaches.
I know it's still an estimate. Is there any estimate for how many Saturdays you think might be involved? Is too ambiguous?
Basically looking for to work with flexibility.
Right, okay. Okay, Tony?
Yeah, I'm also not a fan of removing Saturdays. I think we should have the ability to work on Saturdays. I don't like the idea of pushing this project out another 15 to 20% on the timetable, so my 2 cents worth.
Sure.
And I just wanted to point out, and I failed to do so in my initial comments, is that this agreement specifically says that additional comments and revisions may be required by the town council and the Department of Public Works as the project progresses and makes, you know, there's a way that we can change that at a later point, that or any other issue.
If there's a concern with this, you know, come to National Grid and we'll figure out how to deal with it.
Thank you.
Paul?
Well, the problem is that if it's a Saturday morning at 7 a.m., people aren't going to come back to us. So I hear you about Saturdays and we want to keep the option open, but can it be Saturday starting at 9 maybe? Could we even just, that 2 hours for a Saturday morning is, you know, outside of your door, I sat next to Hallmark Health for 2 years during construction. And, you know, if it started at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, that was tough. As someone who gets up at 5:30 every day, it's tough on a Saturday. So I don't want to take that day away, but even those 2 hours make a big difference.
Mr. Chairman, if I can make a
Sure,
suggestion,
National Grid, sure.
Can National Grid work with the Department of Public Works and get agreements between those two groups, as opposed to a fixed value here, or a fixed time? I mean, we can come to Rick and tell him when we're going to work. If there's an issue, we've got some flexibility there.
So, it still sounds a little gray, I guess, for probably the town council, but.
They've
Ann, go ahead.
they've been honest with us, I think, from the beginning. So
Sure,
I have no
okay.
reason to doubt that you will not work with Rick, and if we have a problem with it, then we can come back and do something fixed. I'm hesitant to do something fixed right now.
Okay,
Maybe the other point to bring up is that this activity, it doesn't stay in front of one house. Think of it as a rolling construction site.
Right. Ed?
But it doesn't mean that someone's not going to have a jackhammering outside their door at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, and I think that's a bit unfair to those who are, abutting this project. I think at a minimum, it sounds like the consensus is not to preclude Saturdays. That's the sense that I'm getting from this group, and so perhaps I'll change my motion to say like a, I don't know, 9, 10, or 10 a.m. start. I mean, that's asking a lot of people on a Saturday morning to have construction outside your door at 7 a.m.
I had construction outside my door for several weeks in a row when the senior center was being built.
Well, that's not right. It shouldn't have been at 7
But
a.m.
I rolled with it. Our town is building something nice. I rolled with it. We're getting something for this benefit. It's a rolling construction site. If it's a problem, I have no... People can come to us, you can come to us, we can figure it out ourselves to come back and put something fixed in place, but I'm not comfortable doing it now.
But why do we have to wait until it becomes a problem for us to have to address the issue?
Because it may not be a problem.
Well, if it's not a problem, then that's a different story. But I'm fairly confident that anyone that has jackhammer at 7 a.m. outside their door on a Saturday is going to have a problem with that. I don't care how much it's rolling. If you're 7 to 7:15 at your house and 7:15 to 7:30 at the next door neighbors, that's not going to matter. It's significant.
Paul?
Chairman?
Paul?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Item number 42 discusses noise mitigations. National Grid's already putting into play that they will provide portable sound barriers at any locations with their own residences. They've already taken the initiative by stepping to the plate and saying that they'll take into consideration the noise. Any limitation that we put on the 7 o'clock start only affects the people that are sitting at the table there. That doesn't prevent me from starting a jackhammer at 7, right next door to them. So how are you going to stop me from making noise? So it's a hypothetical now that I'm trying to present. The argument's right, but you're not going to stop others from making the noise at 7. I have a tree service near my house, 7 o'clock sharp every Saturday morning. They're powering up those power tools, and I hear them through my entire house. They're only 280 feet away from my house. So I hear those. You can't stop that type of work.
Sure you can. I mean, perhaps it's something we need to think about in a broader scale, but I think we know this is a known project that's going to be carrying on for a significant amount of time that is very nearby residences that are already being inconvenienced by it. And so the notion of starting them a couple hours later, I cannot imagine that a 2-hour, delay in a start time would fundamentally change the project or the timeline for you guys. I just don't find that to be plausible.
Julie?
And maybe it's just a point of clarification, but number 16 says that no excavation or trench work is allowed in the public right-of-way in the town of Wakefield from November 18th to April 15th. So we're only talking, from a jackhammer standpoint, right? We're only talking about a 6-month period, more the summer when the days are longer. I don't know whether that makes a difference, but I think it's somewhat kind of inherently minimized in that clause.
Mr. Chairman, maybe a couple
Can I just
points.
jump in for 1 second, Mr. Chairman? We do have a public hearing at 7 o'clock
Right.
for the water and sewer rates. My suggestion is that the board open the public hearing by roll call vote, then continue it to be picked up again later in this meeting, so you can,
Okay. So we
that'll
continue
put us on
this.
all fours with that. Sorry,
Okay.
guys, but
Okay, so we need to have a roll call vote
have
for.
a motion first.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing in regards to the water and sewer bill,
Second.
with the intent to take it up again after
this
this
Okay.
discussion.
Yep, sounds good. And roll call?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and sorry for the interruption.
No,
Sorry.
duly noted, thank you for doing that. Did you, sorry,
Yeah, maybe
please go
2
ahead.
points, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
It's very true about we have a limited construction window to work with here because of the weather. Snow starts and you can't work in the streets because you have to plate, and then we have problems with snowplows. The other very important point is that we have a very active outreach program here. We can address that where this construction is occurring, we will be telling people when we're working there and the times and the days we're going to be in front of their homes. And if there's an issue, we can deal with it on that basis as part of the outreach program.
Yeah, Danielle Loretz, I'm coordinating all of the outreach for the project. And on various other projects we've had, Saturday work, we've even had sometimes where we've had to go in and do Sunday work. And we've worked with the residents on it. We give them, proper heads up. We try and see where we can avoid different areas. If we can avoid an area, or maybe tell the guys, don't start up the machines until, do your safety brief and do everything that you've got to do at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then at 8 o'clock start the trucks. We've been able to do different accommodations, obviously respecting the fact that, yeah, we are in front of people's homes. I mean, I have a farm next to my house. I never get to sleep in past 6 o'clock in the morning, even if I wanted to. But you just kind of, exactly as you said, you roll with it when there's construction going on. We're very sensitive to people's needs. We're very sensitive to the questions that we get, to the fact that, if somebody wants their home surveyed prior to the project, we've agreed to do that. We've agreed to do the, various different things, and we've been very upfront. Many people have signed up for they've opted into our e-newsletter, so they're already starting to get updates on the work that we're going to be doing, and we'll have an interactive map so that they're constantly aware and can easily see, where we're progressing and what we're doing and what's to be expected. So the lines of communication are absolutely consistently open with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have on the floor, we have a motion to grant a location easement, and then we also have an amendment from Ed for that.
Just to clarify, to start at 9 a.m., because as much as I can appreciate you living next to a farm, that's a choice that you made to live next to a farm. These folks that are affected aren't choosing to have this construction, and I don't think that it's appropriate to tell people that they just have to roll with it. I think that that's not the appropriate way to approach this issue, and as much as they might know that, or be made aware that there's going to be construction outside their home at 7 a.m., that doesn't minimize the inconvenience to them. So I appreciate that it'll be communicated to them that there will be noise outside their home, but that still doesn't address the fundamental issue here. It feels inappropriate that we are seeking to inconvenience neighbors further when we can try to mitigate that. And I don't think that sound walls and the like are the way to do it. I mean, construction is loud, and this construction in particular will be loud.
Do we have a second on the motion, on Ed's motion for the amendment?
Seconded.
Okay, second. So,
We need to vote on the amendment first.
okay, so I don't think we need any further discussion. I think the sides have kind of balanced out for what they want to say. So can we have a vote for Ed's amendment, that we're all in favor of Ed's amendment? Please raise your hand. Okay, 2, and all opposed? Okay, so that's 5 to 2, show that.
Go back on the main.
Julie's.
Okay, so now
Julie's
the
motion.
main motion, right. So the main motion to grant a location easement that Julie, do you want to read it again?
I'm going
Okay, just wanted to see her smile for a change down there, right? I'm sure everyone understands what Julie said earlier. Thank you, Julie. So can I have a vote to approve Julie's motion that started this process? All in favor of Julie's motion? So we have 6, and all opposed? Okay. Thank you. Good discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
very much.
You can go back into the public hearing on water rates now.
Okay. Okay, so. So I'd like to, on number 4, go back into public hearings for water and sewer rates, fiscal year 2019. We have Rick Stinson and Joe Conley again. Thanks for staying.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Quick question before you start. Joe, what is your position with the DPW?
Assistant Director.
Assistant Director.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I should
Joe.
know- I should know that.
So you know, Joe Conway will be taking Carol's place,
Okay.
and
Okay.
he will be the Assistant Director of Public Works. So,
When's that official, Rick?
well, it's been official for a while,
Okay.
but Carol will be retiring on, I believe, the official last day is July 11th.
Great, congratulations and to both, actually. Great.
Huh?
Okay, Rick, so your favorite conversation every year, water and sewer rates, fiscal 2019.
Okay. The recommendation is for a water rate of $7.20 per 100 cubic feet, and a sewer rate of $11.35 per 100 cubic feet. And I'll go through the detail on, shortly on page 3 of the cover of the letter that you received, the recommendation letter. To give you some general information, the combined rate increase is 3.92%, which is lower than last year's 4.692%. Public Works, Water and Sewer divisions are self-sustaining divisions. Means they need to fund themselves, and they need to, and if they don't, it would impact the tax rate. In other words, if we didn't raise enough money, it would come out of the tax levy, or we would have to borrow. They both need to raise a sufficient funding. Our average bill is lower than Melrose and Reading. Our consumption is now lower than it was in 1959. 1959, it was higher. Back in the 90s, we were at about 1 billion gallons of water consumption. We now fluctuate between 620 million and 680 million. And so what that means, it's no different than any other product or commodity. The more you use, the less it costs per unit. The less you use, the more it costs per unit. And it's a similar thing. It's just the way it works. And I guess one other point to realize is that if I did not pump one drop of water during the fiscal year, you might say, hey, we're gonna save all kinds of money. We would not. We would save very little money in either budget because the MWRA fees on the water side are based on last year's consumption, so we're gonna pay that no matter what. And the sewer fee is based on population, flow, high strengths, and that's a set number that we're gonna pay that amount. And then all of the regulatory stuff, whether it be testing, flushing of the system, a whole host of items would still have to do that. The water system's under pressure, so we'd have water breaks. So all of that stuff would continue. That would not disappear, even if we didn't pump any water. So when consumption declines, it negatively impacts both the being able to pay the bills, but also the reserve. We utilize reserves to cover capital outlay, warrant articles, emergencies, consumption shortfalls, and that's important. This year, because of low reserves, the water capital outlay and will come out of the receipts instead of out of the reserve. We should have around a $2 million reserve for water. Our system was built back in, a good part of it, back in the 1920s and 30s. Our water tank is a probably 30-year-old, 1930s tank. And the slow sand filters are back from the 1930s. So if we had a water break, huge water break, we need that reserve to take care of that, not counting consumption shortfalls. And consumption can drop quite a bit. So you need that reserve to take care of those. So $2 million is where that should be. We estimate on June 30th of this year, we'll be at $450,000. On the sewer side, we should have about $1 million. We're at that currently, but taking out, on the sewer side, I took the capital outlay out of the reserve. We estimate that on June 30th of 2019, if everything was perfect, which it won't be, we would have a reserve of around $863,000. We also factored in this year to reduce the rate. Generally, I don't do this. When the MWRA drops a small amount, because they vote well after our town meeting and well after, I think it was last week, they voted on the MWRA Board of Directors on June 20th. They voted their rates. There was a small decrease of $25,000 on the water side and a small decrease on the sewer side of the preliminary assessments of $50,000. I've actually deducted that in the rate calculation this year. So we need to have sufficient reserves, and that's an issue. The water and sewer increase. The combined increase for the average user, and we use 12,000 cubic feet. If you were to probably do an average today, it's less than that for an average homeowner. Why do we continue to use 12,000? It's so we can compare to past years, that's all. So the average user's increase would be $75.60 after the discount for the year, or $18.90 per quarter. Last year's increase was $86.40 for the year and $21.60 per quarter. It's important to note that a gallon of water in fiscal year 19 will cost 2.5 cents. If you go to the store and you buy a 16-ounce, one of these babies here, that comes out to $1.30. You buy a gallon's worth of those, it's quite a bit of money compared to what you pay for that Wakefield water, which I will tell you is probably safer and a better quality than what you're getting in the store. On the water side of the formula, consumption did decrease a small amount this year. The reserves were used probably 9 out of the past 18 years to minimize the rate. Unfortunately, that's put us in the position we are in now, where we don't have a large enough reserve. The MWRA assessment on the water side is 43% of the budget, so that's a fixed number. On the sewer side, the MWRA represents almost 77% of the budget. On the positive side, as I mentioned, our bill is quite a bit less than both Reading and Melrose, before and after the discount is taken. And we encourage everyone to take the discount. If you don't take the discount, it's a huge penalty. You lose 10% off the bill. You also will pay 14% interest, and there's a $10 demand. So for just a 60-day period, if you didn't pay your bill and you're an average user, it's going to cost you an extra $117 and change. So we want everyone to take advantage of the discount. Talked about that. Okay, if you go to the page 3 of the memo, you will see the votes that are requested. One is on the water rate of $7.20 per 100 cubic feet. And there is we don't allow second meters. As you know, we have a policy there that we don't allow them currently. However, the ones that we did have prior to that policy being input, and there's probably around less than 100, we charge an $18 fee for that. They have separate lines that go into the property, and since the policy went in place, we continue to charge an $18 service charge plus the usage. The sewer rate's $11.35 per 100 cubic feet. The sewer flat rate, and we have some residents that, and not many, that are on well water, so we need to bill that sewerage. That is done one of two ways. We will put a meter on their well, or they pay the minimum amount of 12,000 cubic feet over the course of the year. And so the flat rate is $3.40, $340.50 for the quarter, and that's prior to the discount being taken. The septic disposal rate section that's there is the same as last year. That has not changed. We do not generally have anybody that disposes of septic in our system. We are required to have a site. We also charge for that. So if you had a trailer or you had something pumped, your septic system pumped, and you brought it to our location, you would pay the fees that are there, which is $110 per delivery for opening the site, disposal cost of whatever the cubic feet comes out to times the rate, and then on off hours, you'd pay 3 hours at time and a half for the person to show up. I know the past few years, we may have had 1 or 2 occasions for that. And then the last one is a new fee. This fee is for manual reads. As you know, we're in the process of replacing meters. We do have difficulty getting into some locations. This fee would not be used unless, after the number of times we issue letters, which is a minimum of 3, maybe even 4, that we try to get in, then we would begin charging a $50 fee per quarter. Because we're still reading that manually. And that's basically, we don't want to charge anyone that fee, so we encourage people when they get the card to replace the meter, that they contact the company and move forward with that.
Rick, can I just ask one question? Just when you say the meter change out, that's actually done by USI, right?
Correct. We do some ourselves, too.
So I just got my postcard last week. I just want to make sure that it was all legit. I got 2, actually, so I don't have 2 meters.
Right.
So
if you adopt this, you won't hear from us for another 2 times.
Right.
But I'd rather have you do it right away.
But it's just so the folks at home that USI is the company we've approved. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, any questions you have?
Any questions from the town council? Ed?
Just two things, Rick. One of them is the MWRA assessment really ostensibly predetermines these rates, you know, by and large, right? I mean, we by the time it gets to us at the town level, that assessment drives the percentage increase by and large. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, the assessment drives the whole budget,
That's what
which
I'm-
drives the rate.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, because we're looking at just shy of 4%, 3.992, which is outpacing inflation, better than it was fiscal 18, but still higher than I think we'd like it to be. But that roots back to the MWRA's assessment, which is more a state issue than it is something we can handle here at the local level.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And I know that we have, you know, we've reached out to our delegation in the past about this. What are some of the obstacles that we face as a community, you know, with trying to affect that kind of a change that will then trickle down to us?
One, you can always contact the legislators. I've written letters in the past. And it will drive down when you send a letter, and we were successful one year. It drives it down a very small amount. But they're no different than us. They have a certain amount of cost that they have to deal with. You have the debt, which is the huge item on the sewer treatment plant. And then you have the rebuilding of the system. If you think about it, the sewer treatment plant at Dare Island was built in the 80s, late 80s, 90s. They're already starting to rehab that. So, you know, it has been, their increases have not gone up as much as they had anticipated, which is good, but they're still increasing.
But also statewide, aren't we somewhat in the minority in terms of MWRA communities? So in terms of
Yes.
trying to affect some sort of, you know, legislation at the state level, that's going to be a challenge in and of itself, just because more communities are not MWRA affiliated. Is that right?
Correct. One of the questions has always been, well, gee, shouldn't the entire state pay for this? And if you're out in Springfield, you're saying, why should I pay for that? You know, or a good part of the whole state, why should I pay for that? So they have put in debt assistance for the MWRA specifically into the budget. And they put an amount in there every year. It gets factored into this, into their assessments. However, a number of years that's been cut out. 1 year it actually resulted in a huge rate increase for us. Most years they try to eat it. It all depends on how much it is. So sometimes it will happen, but it all comes down to June and the governor says, I don't have the money to pay the MWRA, and they'll pull that out. You know, so that, it'll go in there, the legislature will put it in, and then the governor will pay it or not pay it.
I just think like as a body, we need to be mindful of this, because there's only so much we can do at the local level, but it's, you know, to the extent we can reach out through our delegation to try to address the issue of MWRA generally, I think that's the only way we're going to reasonably have an impact
true.
on these percentages.
Right.
Julie?
Can I just ask, so when you say that there is a lag in kind of consumption, last year's consumptions essentially contribute to this year's rates. So is it fair to say that if over time Wakefield does reduce or conserve water, that over time the rates would go down, understanding that what Ed said about, you know, some of the fixed cost, capital costs that we have at the state level? Is that a fair assessment?
Other way around.
I'm sorry, it goes up, right.
Yeah, it goes up.
Sorry.
If we conserve, and we drop down to 500 million, the rate's gonna
It's the
skyrocket.
economy of scale.
Yeah.
So it's essentially a perverse incentive to conserve water.
Completely
is what we have.
counterintuitive. Conservation actually costs us more
I mean,
money.
that's what I think we
Conservation
need to
costs.
talk to the state delegation about,
Yeah.
quite
And it's
honestly.
not that conservation's not good, but it costs.
Understand.
do the town a favor and just water your lawns.
Use those rain barrels, I know, those rain barrels must be very.
It's it. I mean, it's the water bottles.
Right.
I mean, no one, every kid, every parent buys, you know, 24, a case of 24, 36
So
every
link it
week.
into, right, we're gonna have recycling problems, let's
Right.
up our consumption with water.
I will
drinking
say,
water.
I do not buy any water bottles at all.
I try to buy less.
Strictly use
I
town water, and I'll also say that most people think that it's not as good. Our water is tested so much, because it's required, and then we do some other testing beyond that. It's a huge testing and a costly testing program. These things aren't tested as well, okay? And they're in plastic.
Right.
Okay, so
Okay.
I encourage everyone to drink town water.
Tony?
But I think the public also needs to understand that we no longer have washing machines that use 40 and 50 gallons a cycle. Like the washing machine I have in my house is probably 7 or 8 gallons.
Toilets.
The toilets is now 1.5 versus 3, and
Showers.
shower heads that are 2.5 restricted. So it's water bottles are one thing, but it's really everything is just so much more efficient than it was 30, 40, 1950. You said we were using over 1 billion gallons. So
Yeah, we're down basically a third.
yeah,
And,
which is great.
It is good.
That's good, but it's
More expensive.
not so good.
And thank you, Rick, and again, good luck, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick and Joe.
Okay, so we need
Okay.
multiple.
So we're gonna need, it looks like 5 different motions, seconds, and votes. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the water rate at $7.20 per 100 cubic feet.
And the second
Second.
meter also,
And, so, second, so you want it same as, the same vote?
$18, yeah.
Second meter base charged $18 per current water rate per quarter, no change.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none?
Chairman, I'll entertain, I'll make a motion to set the sewer rate for $11.35 per 100 cubic feet.
So, second.
Discussion?
I just wanted to quickly mention, Rick, that maybe you could just briefly speak to the fact that that agreement that we made with Market Street, the sewer agreement that is in place now, we signed about a year or so ago, that has had a positive impact financially on us, right?
Correct. That agreement, we get receipts for, based on the water consumption similar to us, from the Market Street for sewer. However, in the amount we pay out is 77%, which goes to the MWRA. The rest of it just goes to maintaining our system, which we wouldn't have, because we do not maintain their system. So that's a win for us.
And when they build their 800-seat theater, just be increasing our,
That would be terrific. It'll give us more revenue to
Linfield's all
offset
for it.
stuff.
That'll be coming up next. News at 11.
It was a
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so with Paul's motion on the sewer rate, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none? Paul, you're on a roll. You want to just keep going?
If that's your wish, Mr. Chair.
That would be great, because you're doing a great
Sewer
job.
flat rate, $340.50 per quarter, or $306.45 after the discount is taken, based on the recommended sewer rate, and that would be my motion.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
All opposed? Seeing none? Fourth. If anyone wants to jump in on septic disposal
Paul's
rate.
doing such a great job.
Well,
Let him roll.
keep going, Paul.
Septic disposal rate, I'll make a motion for the facility opening and maintenance charge of $110 per delivery. Disposal cost per 100 cubic feet is charged at the current sewer rate. Off-hour disposal rate, additional minimum 3 hours at current W9 scale times 1.5.
Second.
Discussion? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none?
And Mr. Chairman, I was chairperson. And the last motion that I would like to make would be for a meter fee for manual read, non-change of $50.
Second.
Discussion, can we
Discussion.
just add per quarter? That's what you said?
Yeah.
So can we just add that in there?
Per quarter.
Yeah, you can, I would also recommend, because I didn't spell it out here, that you say after 3 attempts of trying to contact someone to get it, because that's our intent, is not to do it like after the first try and stuff.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll amend it then and make it so that I can,
Still a discussion.
okay.
Tony, go.
How many homes are we talking about, Rick?
Most homes we get in, there are, and I'd have to get the list from Carol with this,
Mhm.
a number that are very difficult to get into.
And do we make any effort for personal contact other than the letter?
We
like-
try to do letters, calls,
Okay.
we attempt to, we'll offer Saturdays, and
Just not before 7.
it's just somewhat difficult,
Do you think there's other reasons they don't want to let you in?
possibly.
Do you think that that may be
Oh.
something we want to talk about, I suppose, now? But, yeah, they need to be changed. They
As
need to get
as
into
we
the
find
house.
those, we will come talk to you.
Right, okay. Tony, you all set?
Yes.
Okay, so we have Paul's motion.
I'm going to amend the
To amend
motion
it.
for the meter fee for manual read to state after 3 attempts that we would charge a non-change rate of $50 per quarter.
Second.
Discussion on that? All in favor? This is just the amendment. Right? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And going back to the first part for the meter fee. Are we good for that? Covers both? Okay. Good, Paul, excellent job.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. And I think that's it.
I think you have one, do you want to do the other item?
You want to do,
Oh, the yard
Oh.
waste. Why don't you jump to that?
jump to that? Okay, so,
I was gonna make them stay. You're much nicer.
Huh?
well, I think they wanted to, well, I don't know, they might want to stay too.
Do you have to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I think you might note for the record that there was no members of the public present.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I move that we close the public hearing for the water and sewer rates, noting that no members of the public were present or participated in the discussion.
Second.
and all in favor? Aye.
Roll call.
Yes.
A roll call, sorry. Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
yes. 6 and 7.
All right, now.
Okay, so next, let's move over to,
Item D.
Julie, did you want to speak first on this
3D.
3D? We're on 3D. Okay, so, right, Nahan Street Yard Waste Facility. Sorry about bouncing around here. So it's 3D, access every Saturday and Sunday during the prime season. Actually, it's Ed, not Julie. Ed, did you want to say anything first on this?
Sure, I can provide just a handout, just a calendar. So, as you know, last time I had mentioned in closing remarks that I wanted to address the issue of the Nahan Street Yard Waste Facility hours and days of operation. Currently, we have this, which lays out the days that it's open during the season. It's the facility, often referred to as the pit, is open basically from April 11th through early December, weather permitting. And it had troubled me that we weren't open enough during weekend hours. And I found that, so I did a bit of an analysis here, and this is what the schedule lays out here. So this is what the schedule is currently. If you look at the green is all the days that the facility is currently open. And you'll note that it's a scattering of Saturdays, some Sundays, and consistently Wednesdays. The facility is only open to residents, so there's not a commercial component to this, so the idea of being open on Wednesdays serves only the needs of our town residents. And I had come to learn, in speaking with a number of residents, that oftentimes they will plan their own yard work or mowing their lawn and the like around the hours that our facility is open, which I thought was somewhat odd. And so sometimes people, for example, take a day off from work on a Wednesday because they know that consistently they can bring their yard clipping, grass clippings, and yard waste to this facility on a Wednesday. And otherwise, I felt like it was a bit of a scattershot in terms of knowing when it would be open and when it would not be. And I know that I know firsthand the frustration of having, stuff to drop off and then finding that it was not the facility was not open on that day. And so when I originally spoke before this body, I had suggested that we look at opening it up Saturdays and Sundays during what I called prime season. I had a chance to speak with Mr. Stinson and Mr. Conway about this, along with Mr. Mayo as well, and we looked at the calendar and did basically, we considered a number of different factors. One of them would be staffing concerns. Currently, the staffing is 2 people per shift. It's 1 person generally operates equipment, so there would need to be someone, I'll call them a more skilled staffer. The other person is primarily, they're at the gatehouse basically checking passes. So I don't want to call them unskilled, but a lesser skilled employee. Certainly the person operating the equipment would be, a DPW, personnel who's trained in knowing what they're doing. And looking at this, I also took into account the fact that we do have curbside pickups. Those are indicated on blue, and we have one. We had one May 19th this year. We have 2 in the fall, November 3rd and November 17th coming up. And so I tried to approach this with how can we reliably have hours of operation so that people are able to have greater access to the facility, but also have a greater degree of predictability. And so in going through with Rick, we basically looked at July 1 as a starting point, and long and the short of it is, I think as an interim measure, say for this year, if we had the facility open every Saturday, and the second and fourth Sundays for the fall, which is based on what Rick was saying, the prime time when people are raking leaves and the like, that seemed to be a reasonable composition for this year. I think we should see how it goes, and the next year look at perhaps expanding so that we have it open Saturdays and Sundays on just the regular basis, and those are predictable. The Wednesdays would remain unchanged. Rick and Joe both indicated that they recognize that there are staffing needs related to this. They thought they have to obviously speak with the union rep and work through making sure that we're staffed, but this seemed to be a schedule that is workable for this calendar year. Again, I think this is a starting point for us. Knowing that you can go to Nahant Street every Saturday is something you can't do currently, and adding additional Sundays into the mix now I think makes sense. Just as a point of clarification, November is a little bit tricky. Veterans Day is the 11th, and so that would not be open on that day. And Saturday the 24th follows the Thanksgiving weekend, so it made sense to do the 25th, that Sunday, in place of that. But I think this is it's a good step forward that provides a real benefit to the people of our town, and so I'm asking for this body's endorsement of this, and then we'll revisit next year and see how we can expand it even further.
Okay, discussion? Paul?
My only question is, and you probably did do the study, and you probably did mention, the opening of either the Saturday or the Sunday doesn't butt up against any holidays, correct?
No, I don't believe so, no. The thing is, any of the green circles are already pre-scheduled, so we didn't disturb those. That's why a couple of them are a little bit funky.
No, I'm understanding that, but wherever I see red, it doesn't bump up against a holiday that they would have had a longer weekend off, and now they're going to have to work.
I don't believe so, no.
Labor Day isn't the.
Labor Day is Thursday.
I can give you the exact
third.
dates if
They're
you
off
want.
on the third.
Labor Day's the 3rd, and the
I didn't know if it
2nd,
was the
it's
10th.
When's
right.
Columbus Day?
Do you want the exact dates?
Of the holidays?
No, the days that we talked about.
We have them right here.
We have them.
So all the red boxes are the proposed additions to the current schedule. The current schedule's in green. And the blue boxes are simply pickups, which make no sense to have. It's actually dangerous to have the facility open on the pickup days because of the trucks coming in and out throughout the day.
Sure. That's
And,
good.
and I should, one last point on this too, most importantly, from a financial standpoint, this would fall within available dollars for the budget. I spoke with Steve about that in detail as well, so that is also covered.
John?
Rick, what is the cost of opening the facility on a Saturday versus that on a Sunday?
On a Saturday, it's about $750 for Saturday, not counting fuel and other things.
The average cost, yeah.
And on a Sunday, it's probably 65% of that.
And would we be forcing anybody to work on Sunday, or would we have volunteers that would jump to the Sunday?
And as I explained to Mr. Dombrowski earlier today, that's one of the things I gotta talk with staff about, because it's difficult at times now to get people, so we'll be going through that exercise with them to make sure we're covered on everything.
And Ed, I don't mean, I like your idea, but I think we should table this till Rick has those discussions. I would really have a problem with forcing someone to work on Sunday. You know, if,
I can't force them to work,
I
so you know. The only time I can force anybody to work is during an emergency. So, 4th of July,
Yeah.
Italian festival, the holiday stroll, this stuff, it's more volunteer basis.
I would just like to know that those volunteers are available.
Yeah.
When we had discussed this earlier, and this has been discussed in the past, cost always came up and manpower came up. So I just want to make sure, like Tony, what has changed perhaps before we vote to do it, because I agree, having it open more often is convenient, but I want to make sure the cost benefit is also there, and that we're also, I'm also hesitant to make guys work or women work on a Sunday, even though you can't make them. There's always a pressure, or, you know, low woman on the totem pole to get in there. So what changed to make this somewhat viable?
The cost is about an additional, for the 10 days that are added, would be about $7,500, not counting fuel and some other things.
Okay.
The employee part, I have to work that out.
Rick, just a quick question. So if no one wants to go on Sunday, then you're not going down there, I'm assuming.
That would
What
be
would
correct.
what would you?
Steve is.
Steve's not going either. What would you do? Do you have to go out to another town, how would you?
I don't know, I have to work that out.
Okay, so that's still in the works, okay. Okay. Ed?
I think there are two other considerations too. One of them is for this summer, for example, we have about 10 summer hires. They currently work a Monday through Friday schedule. These are just temporary summer hires. Another consideration I also explored, including with Steve, was the option of we have the senior tax work-off program, and a lot of that is more clerical in nature. We obviously can't have someone through that program operating equipment and machinery, but is there the possibility that we could have a senior that is working at the gate checking passes? That was another option out there as well. So I think that there are options to be considered relative to this.
I can jump in on one thing. There is not a Sunday added, and I understand the forcing people to work on Sunday argument. There's not a Sunday added in this until September.
23rd, September 23rd.
September, so we could start on giving Saturdays, because that's kind of a working day. And then if we find a problem, we can come back to the board, but we can start with the idea that let's start going Saturdays. We want to let people know that it's open, obviously. I mean, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to monitor this and track it to see, hey, maybe we find that July isn't busy and we're counterproductive, or maybe we find it's very busy. So we're trying to go through a different way of looking at this.
And what do you think?
I think that if this does help the citizens to use this more for minimal money over the year, which it really isn't too bad. When we looked at other things, if we had a truck there and we had a packer,
Right.
those are what really move the
Okay.
things up. But I think we monitor it and see. We do pilots in a lot of things, and
Sure.
that's how I would look at this for relatively, minor dollars. But we do have to work with the union to see who wants to work, how we're going to do it,
Right.
and what have you.
Tony?
Quick question, how many pit passes have been issued?
Well, at this point, I don't know, but we're probably over 1,000, but generally we do somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500. And there'll be about 1,000 sold from October to the end of November, for that short little window. Generally, the July and August, even September, when it's hot and dry out, you don't get a lot of people going down there.
Paul?
I think Julie was first.
No, it was, just so I'm reading this right, so we already do 9 Sundays, so we're only adding 2 Sundays. Do you have problems getting people to work those 9 Sundays that are already on the calendar?
I'll know better tomorrow.
But this isn't the first year we've had 9 Sundays.
Yeah, no, because remember, they're used to this schedule.
Okay.
So they know what it is, and so we don't have a problem. Occasionally, we'll have an issue, but
That's my question, just.
generally, we're pretty good. Adding 10 extra days, I don't know, I won't know till tomorrow.
So it's not just the Sundays you're concerned about, it's the 10 extra days.
Yeah, because remember that there's a lot of stuff that we do that's planned. So let's start with events. You have the Italian Festival on a Saturday. Could be an impact. We have there's a couple other events in there, but we also have planned work projects because you can't do them, especially around the schools during the day. So we have staff working on that. So we have to look at that whole schedule and see how we're going to work around that.
Paul?
We're adding 10 days, Rick, realistically. 10 days of full operation, is that gonna put a big impact on what we have going into the site, turning around and what's leaving the site?
No, it'd probably still be the same amount of stuff. I don't think it's gonna change the amount of stuff that greatly.
And the turnover is pretty quick. How long is the turnover till you start removing stuff from the pit?
We remove stuff every year.
Okay.
The 1 year we didn't was because the budget was so tight. Actually, the year that the recycling contractor went belly up. So we had to utilize that funding for that purpose.
Right.
Towards
Okay.
covering that cost. And so we ended up not hauling stuff out that year.
Okay, thank you.
It goes every year.
All set, Mr. Chair, for me.
Thank you. So at this stage, I mean, I think we've discussed it probably enough. Again, anything we do here, vote-wise, we can alter if something happens and Rick can't get any volunteers for those 10 days, and certainly don't want people going down to have a locked gate in front of them.
And just to clarify,
Sure.
These are time and a half employees. This is not volunteer work. So we say, volunteer, I agree,
Sure.
you could take on a shift, but I mean, there are as many employees that are interested in making additional money as there are those that are looking to preserve the weekend, so.
Right. They're not doing it for free.
It's not an
Okay.
altruistic sort
Okay.
of like, approach that we're
Duly
taking here for
noted,
this,
right.
certainly. Unless they want to, which I would have no issue with, but
Right.
that's obviously not what the intention is.
Right, no, I get you.
Yeah.
Rick's, all his employees love him, but working for free may be a different issue.
Can't get it for free.
Tony?
The only other thing, Rick, is that, with these extra days were added, if we could keep track of how many people come in and how many people, just check off every time a person uses it, so.
That's our plan.
Okay.
Yeah. We're actually gonna keep track of probably every day if we're gonna keep track, so we'll track every day that we're
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
So
We've spoken
Might
in
be a
detail
new
about
schedule.
doing that to know where the demand lies,
So if
so
we
that
could
going
back days
forward.
out, yeah.
In the future, I mean, Wednesdays might with this shift, Wednesdays might end up not being the best day, who knows? I think it's a very fluid arrangement.
This may help him change the whole schedule for next year, based on what he finds out this year. Okay, any further discussion? I think we've probably talked this one through. So, all in favor for changing the rest of the season to the 10 red dates on the proposed 2018 calendar?
As a pilot program?
It's a pilot program.
Steve?
That's
Yeah.
fair enough, yeah, duly noted. And
Good point.
is that enough to, anyone else want to add anything to that? Okay. So, all in favor to?
I don't
Sorry.
know if you had a motion yet, Mr. Chairman.
So
Excellent point.
I'll make the motion then that we add the following dates to the schedules to allow for regular Saturdays and additional Sundays. So July 14th, 28th, August 11th, August 18th, September 8th, 15th, 23rd, 29th, October 28th, and October 13th.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none?
Thank you. Have a good night.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
So back
to 3B.
Okay, back to 3B, the fiscal year 2018 reserve fund transfer.
Yes.
Steve, would you like to?
Sure. As the council may recall, and for new members and refresher for all of us, is that at the end of every fiscal year, we run through where we are on our different account lines, on our different budgets, and there are certain items that need to be handled through the reserve fund program. We put $300,000 into the reserve fund that's handled by the Finance Committee. And then items that come up that are unexpected, unanticipated, or in some cases actual real, full-blown emergencies, we have to take care of them when we put them in here. So every year I like to give you all the list. Interestingly enough, the town council does not vote on this, so this is more for your edification than anything else. But it also gives us a look at items that maybe we need to do some budgetary changes in. Maybe there are things we aren't handling correctly. And I'll try to do it with that bent. So in the town council line item, we have been handling the cost of police details for the street light replacing project. As you may know, that we did change the street lights to, I guess, LED, you'd call them, over the years. That lowered our street light expense every year from $213,000 to $188,000, so there was quite a savings there every year. And this was done through a grant through the state. We did, however, in areas where it was major roadways and what have you, we did have police details. That could not be covered under the grant, so we covered that under our selectmen account. So we'll need to replenish that money to cover that at the end of the year. That's a non-recurring cost that will not be back again. Porta potties at Vets and Spalding, there was a real issue with not having enough there, so we took it on, or I took it on in the miscellaneous council area for the events there. We have since put that money in the DPW budget, so that's something that won't be back. Again, it gives us a way of looking at budgets. That was $14,000. Legal fees due to a lawsuit, $138,000. That is through the end of June. That's certainly something we didn't anticipate. Yeah, the next two items is the special election. Again, we budget the election expense and the election and registration budgets per elections that are called, that we know of. Any elections that are special, we have not budgeted for them. So in this case, that's $15,000 budgeted between those two accounts for the election that will be tomorrow. Board of Appeals, $4,000 from some extra extended meetings. You may note at town meeting, we did look at that, trying to make some changes, and we will look at that again next year. Professional medical, again, this is a function of how many hires we have, and in certain areas, we do also do psychological profiles as well. That we had a few more hires this year, so that number was a little bit higher. In the DPW line item, we had an area of roofs that were damaged over the year because of some very substantial storms in the winter that we could not cover in our regular budget. And at the Civic Center, actually, and I went down there when this happened. I don't know if Councilor Longo went down there too. There was actually water pouring into the electrical panel, so that whole thing had to be redone. I went out of the room when they retested it, thought it was a little safer. So everyone moves up the ladder, yeah. Someone had to lead the way. But in any event, that does bring us in under the $300,000. And if it weren't for a couple of larger items that were completely unanticipated, an emergency in one case, we would have been fine. But this is a pretty typical year with reserve funds. And, had we not had a couple of those, it would have been a little bit better. But I'm fairly pleased. I'm very pleased with the way that Kevin closed out the year, as he usually does. So I think we'll be looking good and have some good news for you on the rest of the way as we go forward. So you don't need a vote on that, but I'm available for questions. No?
You did a great job. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Next issue, the
Greenwood.
The Greenwood. In your packet is a letter that we received from Mass Housing regarding the 40B that is being proposed in the Greenwood area of town. 998 to 1000 Main Street. As part of this process, Mass Housing is asking for a letter from this board, much like we did with Tarrant Lane about 6 months ago, I guess that was now. This letter does not have to be submitted until July 18th, which is after our next meeting. The reason why I wanted it on the agenda today and talking to the chairman is that we will draft one, and looking for board comments as you take a look at this and what have you. Also, does the board want me to get the developer in here on July 16th? You may have questions for them in this area. And if that's so, then I will do that. But I wanted that to be. As you go past Greenwood Plaza,
Yep.
It's across the street. I think there is maybe one property or right next door to the existing condo.
Right next to the school.
I think it's Madeline Brown's property.
So
It's
a
right
little bit
next to the
down.
school, very
No,
close.
it's a couple of doors down from the
Okay.
school, yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Tony?
But anytime we send one of these letters out to some of these developers, I definitely want to include something that talks about the impacts of the school system.
Yeah. Exactly, no, we did that on the
Yeah,
other one too.
like you
so
did
we
with
did.
Tarrant Lane.
But I think that the consensus I'm hearing is that you do want the developer in here.
Definitely.
Okay.
Beat 'em up.
Yeah,
We'll
definitely.
tell them we want them in here then,
Okay. So next meeting.
next meeting, yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And that's July 16th, right?
July 16th, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Want to keep going? 5A, I'm on a roll.
Sure, 5A.
5A
License
is
permits.
in your packet. Pony Shack Cider, Inc. is one of those agriculturally allowable wineries or breweries in this case, or cidery in this case, that will be doing occasional samplings and sales at the farmer's market. This is much like the other vineyards, Aeronap vineyards, I think that we did before. They've been there before over the years, no problems. Town Council, SEL, has reviewed this, and he has no issues as well. So we look for a motion to approve that, Mr. Chairman.
I move that we approve the liquor license for Pony Shack Cider, Inc. for the Farmers Market.
Second?
Discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor of approving the license permit for Pony Shack Cider?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none?
And I think you just need Julie to talk on
Yes.
item 6.
Julie, you're in charge of the warrant review and signing, and I know you've been waiting all meeting for this. Thank you for
I
being
have been
patient. You had to wait to the
waiting for
end.
this.
I know you like to do it in the beginning,
I
but you
now
have to
know
wait.
how much pizza costs at the different schools. So lots of details. But I think probably the one notable thing, kind of following in Tony's, the tradition of Tony, where he kind of called out some interesting things, was, looks to me like the class of 2018 made a $500 donation to Wakefield High School, and I just think it's great that, you know, the classes are giving back as they move on.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so matters not anticipated by the chairperson within 48 hours of the meeting. We start with Maureen.
So I started having meetings with, as social services liaison with the other groups, and I'm just, we'll share more later, but met with our Human Rights Commission with their new chair, Pina Masharali Patel, and I went to WAVE's meeting last week, and the programming they both got scheduled for the year is just gonna make us all really proud. So stay tuned as their events start to get scheduled.
Excellent. You all set? Paul?
Mr. Chair, I just have a couple of congratulatories. One is to the Wakefield track team for an outstanding 2018 season, and the other one is to Peggy Cerullo in her business dance studio of Wakefield. She's celebrating, the company, the business is celebrating 40 years of being in business in Wakefield, and they're also grand champions in their recent dance competition. So big kudos to both of those groups and achieving some great tasks along their way. That's it.
Thank you, Paul. Let's go with Tony, because Julie's exhausted.
Julie's,
It's been tough.
I was attended the Zach Frank first annual lacrosse tourney at the high school on Saturday. They had over 30 teams, which was quite a tribute to quite a young man we lost way too early. Doing it again next year, and I hope to see we get a 3-man team from this board.
Sure.
Wow, challenge.
3-person team.
No, I wasn't commenting on that. I'm saying, sure, why not? No, I mean, I'll be on the team.
Is that it, Tony?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
Ann?
Okay, tomorrow's election. The board, I think, I hope, is unanimous in hoping that everyone votes for the, since we all spoke in favor of it at town meeting, in favor of the, no, strike that, against the vote, right? Is it a no vote we want?
No, you vote yes.
Yes.
We want
We want
yes.
Yes.
Okay, it
Yes,
gets
yes,
so
yes.
confusing
Yes.
when it goes
Vote
town
yes.
meeting to,
Yes.
okay. We want a yes
Yeah.
vote,
Yeah.
to have the public safety building, specifically the police department, renovated, to keep up with best practices. So I hope everyone does vote that way. And with regard to being a liaison to the fire department, I'm gonna be meeting with them within this summer to talk about hopefully some positive changes for things happening there. And finally, just, I apologize for coming in late. The 6:30 start time is hard for those of us that work in Boston. It used to be a 7:30 start time, then it was a 7 o'clock start time, and now it's 6:30. I would urge that we go back to a 7 p.m. for those of us that work not in Wakefield. And quickly, finally, I just, in tabling the minutes, Sherry does a phenomenal job in taking minutes, does it far more detailed than I could ever do. I just want to discuss whether the level of detail needs to be in there for some discussions, because 940 CMR 29.11, which governs the minutes of public meetings, talks about a summary of a discussion. So we don't have to go into such detail on opinions and conjecture that might come back to haunt our board. So that's something for us to talk about next time. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks. Ed?
As the police department liaison, I think I can say rather comfortably that the police department urges you to vote yes tomorrow. They are in serious need of the requested additional space and renovations, and if you've toured the facility, you understand why that need is a real one and an immediate one. Also like to welcome the Mary Lion, a new store that we have on North Avenue. Welcome to Wakefield and to our business community, and wish you great success. Again, congratulations to Wakefield track champions. Job well done this year. And finally, a week from Wednesday is the 4th of July. The West Side Social Club hosts a great array of events throughout the day. The parade obviously at 4:30, and then fireworks to follow at dusk. And please remember, fireworks are illegal here in Massachusetts. We did have an issue here last year with someone setting off fireworks and injuring themselves, and we want to avoid that. So we want everyone to have fun, be safe, be sober behind the wheel, and Wakefield knows how to celebrate like no other town in the country. So I'm confident we'll be able to do it again safely and in a really fun way this year. Thank you.
Julie?
July 1st, which is Sunday, is the first phase of our plastic bag reduction bylaw. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that. It's the larger stores that will first have to comply, but it's a great time for all of us to practice bringing reusable bags. The full town-wide rollout isn't until September, but I know a lot of businesses are already thinking about it, and it's going to take a real partnership, I think, between businesses and us as consumers to make this work for everyone. And then in a kind of an enjoyable part of this job, a few of us went and served at the senior center last week, which was really great. And it's only the second time I've been to the senior center, but what an amazing resource we have. And the staff there was great, and just, again, another thing to be proud of in Wakefield. And then I'll add my vote yes tomorrow. I already absentee voted, so I already voted yes.
How'd you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. So we're ahead 1-0. Mr. Mullen?
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing. Mr. Mayo?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so on the next agenda, I wanted to bring up, I know everyone's dying to talk about this, but I want to go over the rules and regulations bylaw for the peddlers, the next meeting. And also, FOLQ has some comments on the kiosks. I wanted to bring that up and just discuss that as well. That's it for me. Any motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye. 7-0 on that.